Welcome to week 16.2, Natural Resources, our last lecture for the semester. So the outline for this lecture is why we talk about natural resources, some of the basic definitions, types of resources, current state, future projections, and reducing resource depletion risks. So why do we talk about them? It's not a safety and society issue, but it's a risk in society issue. Almost everything we've talked about has a natural resource as an input, whether that's biomass, which is wood, plants, natural gases, anything like that. The same thing goes with technology inputs and everything like that, minerals and ores. These are all natural resources, and they all go into the processes that we have developed and lean on every day. All aspects of the human being well-being depend on resources. That's natural resources, that's air, that's water, that's land. We cannot function as a society without sustaining these or renewing them. And some of the energy that we rely on is not a renewable source, and so we have to find alternative sources. So let's cover some basic definitions. Material, it's a generic term used for categories of resources, both renewable and non-renewable. So this would be anything that goes into the process is the material. The product would be on the output of the process. Your material footprint is the entire system of environmental pressures exerted by an activity, including material extraction, production, consumption, and disposal. So I want you to think about this in terms of industry. So you have inputs on one side, you have the production inside a building, and then you have outputs on the other side. And that's a very basic way to look at it. But the material footprint is, how did we get the input in? Well, we had to, if it's a plastic, that comes from oil, so we had to get the oil out of the ground. All those processes up to the input. Then the input goes into the building. What does the building need? It needs electricity. It needs power. Does it use natural gas for heating? Packaging. What does it do inside there? All those are resources that go into the building itself during the process. And then you have output. On the output side, you have the product. Well, the product has to get to the consumer. So how does it get there? Well, there's a car, there's a truck, there's a train. That takes fuel, that takes electricity. All that is part of the material footprint. And then we have decoupling. Resources use compared to economic value it creates. So relative decoupling means that the resource use grows slower than the value it creates, and then absolute decoupling declines while economic value grows. So you can see here graph of decoupling, human well-being, economic activity, and resource use. They're all relative decoupling. They increase over time, and impact decoupling. So absolute means a decrease is the environmental impact. So your basic categories of resources. You have materials, you have biomass, which is wood, food crops, plant-based material. Then you have your fossil fuels, coal, gas, oil, your metals, and then non-metallic minerals. Sand, gravel, limestone, clay. Those are all non-metallic minerals. Then water and land. Air is also a resource, but it doesn't generally get grouped into this because your air is not used too much for production. So the current state and future projections, just like we did with climate change, you can do the same thing with resources. So you have Earth Overshoot Day. What it is the global network calculates the Earth overshoot day every year. This is the day when we consume more natural resources than the planet can regenerate in a year. Um, the In 2018, so last year, Earth overshoot day was August 1st. So that means by August 1st, we had used all the resources that can regenerate in 1 year. So if you think about that, that left September, October, November, and December, 4 months or a third of the year that we were using next year's resources. We need 1.7 Earths to support our needs for the entire year without depleting our resources, and we need 5 Earths um, if the entire world lived like we do in the United States. We are one of the most wasteful countries there are, and that's all resources, not just natural gas or oil. That's food, plastics. That's everything. We are extremely needy when it comes to a global um, outlook. So you take a look here at the Earth overshoot day since 1969. You see, in 1970, it was just on the opposite side of January 1st, and then it has trended upward ever since to where we're at August 1st, 50 years later. And so these are the by country overshoot days. So this is if we lived like this country. So you see, um, if everybody lived and used resources like the United States, our overshoot day would have been March 15th. That means 3.5 months into the year, we would have been out of uh, resources to use. On the flip side, if you look at the other side, Vietnam uses minimal resources. They made it all the way to December. Same thing with Jamaica. Some of the bigger countries you'll find, China is there June 15th, so halfway through the year. Germany and France are early May. A lot of Europe is early May. Germany, France, Switzerland, the UK, Japan is early May. Uh, but the United States is we only make it 3.5 months. So here's your global trends in material extraction. So this is stuff coming out of the earth. From 1970 to 2010, we have grown, obviously. Usage is shifting from biomass and renewable materials to non-renewable materials, and we're shifting from ag-based to industrial-based economies in developed worlds. So, as you can see there, non-metallic minerals, your clay, salts, are increasing, um, but we're getting away from the biomass and we're going back to non-renewable materials, and that's not what you want to see. So there won't be anything for the future generations. As countries industrialize, they shift from ag base and they go into developing countries where they need to use resources for power and mining and product production for their economies. So we're losing farmland and we're gaining industrial complexes. Regional shares, so this is by region, as you can see there. Uh, in 2017, Asia Pacific had the highest global material extraction. So the Asian Pacific. So there's still lots of resources that they're digging up over there. Um, and you can look at the other Europe and North America and Africa are similar rates in 2017. So regional extraction, has shifted from North America and Europe to the Asian Pacific. Africa, you're going to see more growth in the future, and growing areas are supplying their own needs and exporting materials to the wealthy part of the world. So as the shift for extraction goes over to the Asian Pacific and Africa, we'll see a boon. Europe and the United States or North America and Europe will see a decrease, but we will pay for um, the materials uh, from other countries. And productivity measures. So, material productivity is the amount of economic value created from a kilogram of material. Energy is the amount of economic value created from a joule of the energy. And labor productivity is the amount of economic value created from hours worked. Material productivity has been decreasing while the others are increasing. And this shows a shift from productive economies to less productive economies. And so, as you can see here, your material productivity as energy and labor increase, so the value of both energy and labor increase, the material productivity is actually decreasing. So what we're making is the value is less. Biodiversity is a proportion of species lost due to land use associated with global resource extraction, and the top 5 countries of impact on the right. So as you see, agricultural crops are increasing, which is good for food production, but we're losing land uh, to agricultural areas, which means if you think about this in very broad terms, Brazil is deforesting rainforests to provide land for crops to grow food. And so, yes, we are increasing our food production and increasing the human well-being, but we are destroying habitats of species and we're losing them. And you can see that it's a large increase on that. And then wood extraction, again, you're cutting down trees, and then pasteurizing, so grazing biomass. So you're clearing out land for livestock. And then if you look down on the right here, the top 5 countries that are doing this, and Brazil is in red, and you can see that they are at the top right now. And then India, Madagascar, Indonesia, and China. A lot of these have A lot of these countries have uninhabited land, and they need to deforest or get rid of traditional lands there for the expansion of the population. So, some highlights about material consumption. In 2017, over half of the global market will be used in the Asia Pacific region. That means the stuff that we are planting and the stuff that we are digging out of the earth is going to end up being sold to the Asia Pacific region. That includes China. Africa has seen no growth in per capita material supply. So, it means no matter what it does, is Africa is not seeing a growth in economy and capita, per capita, which is per person. Uh, High income countries still consume 10 times more materials than low income countries. That's because we can afford them. And we don't see it as a problem. And I see I'm using the proverbial we as a country, not us individually. But we and Europeans are the same way, not to the extent that we are in the United States. They use a lot more resources just because we can afford them. And that goes with a stronger economy. So here's your totals per person, um, and you look per on the right uh, is per person. That's per capita, and then on the left there is in the region. So regionally, and we'll look at that purple line, which is 2017. China, or I should say Asia and Pacific, mainly China, is consuming the most materials by a region. So that's you know uh, a whole area of land. But per person or per capita, you look at 2017 on that purple one, North America, and we lead since 1970, since they started doing this. North America, which North America primarily equals the United States, has the most material consumption per person. Now, you can see that we have a downward trend since 1970, or I should say 2000s. We've been on a downward trend of consumption, which is good. That means we're being aware of the risks uh, we take as a global risk on natural resources. You can think of between 2000 and today, there's been many more opportunities for environmental um, uh, um, friendly policies put into place in industries, even here on campus at ISU with recycling, individuals buying secondhand and at thrift stores instead of brand new, and all of that helps reduce consumption. But we still lead the world. And here's our footprint again. We have a smaller footprint. Asian Pacific has the largest material footprint. They're as a region, they're consuming the most, and they're also extracting the most. The trends by material categories. First one is biomass. In 1970, 33% of all the extracted materials was biomass. Remember, biomass is trees and foodstuffs. So we were, and wood, so lumber and agriculture. Think of that. In 2017, it's 25% of all extracted materials. Uh, one of the things that you can say is that a positive effort is that is a reduction of logging industries. We have put some standards into place where they can't um, go out and just wipe out swaths of forest. Now they have to selectively cut trees down, and certain areas are protected. So that even though there is a reduction, there's a positive in the reduction. But that also has the potential of the loss of land, agricultural land. So we lost land to plant things to uh, due to the growth of industry. And the slowest growth in wild caught fishing. Um, so 61% of the commercial fishing populations are fully fished, and 29% are overfished. So there are rules, there are maritime rules on the coasts and in lakes, when you can fish, how many you can fish, how big a fish has to be. Um, but we're still overfishing, so we're still catching more fish than are being repopulated. Fossil fuels growth from 6.2 billion tons to 15 billion tons from 1970 to 2017. This equals 23% of the total materials extracted in 1970. We've reduced that by 6% in 2014. That's really good. Natural gas and coal have higher rates than crude oil, and that is because natural gas and coal increase electricity generation and capacity. So we're going to mine for those more than we are going to be crude oil. However, there's been an increase in North America, especially down in Venezuela, their oil production, just for the attempt to get into the global market. Metal ores, 10% of extractions, it's constant. 2.6 billion tons in 1970, with the increase in industry and industrial revolutions in some developing countries. We mine 9 billion tons of it now. And there's newer technologies require different metals, and you can think of battery technologies. So think how a battery has evolved over the years. Um, we've gone from alkaline, AA, AAA to lithium ion. So we're using different chemicals and different metals inside batteries. So non-metallic minerals, and again, these are coal, clay, salt, sulfur, marble. This has the largest growth. So it's gone from 34% to 47%. And you're seeing the stuff being used in buildings and other ventures. And then water. Water makes up fresh water. Makes up about 2.5% of the total volume of the world's water. That's your freshwater lakes and streams. The UN predicts by 2025, 1.8 billion people will be living in regions with absolute water scarcity. We talked about that in one of our earlier classes, the water issue and the water um, being scarce in some countries. But the growth rate of water consumption is double the rate of population growth. So your water resources per person, and it's similar to what we've looked at, but as you get into the reds and oranges, um, that's your vulnerable areas um, of water, of fresh water resources. And then groundwater. This is a very interesting. So this is the depletion of our groundwater in America. You take a look at the map, and you can see from 1900 to 2000, the worst we did was deplete about, on the high end, 4 kilometers cubed per year. And then from 2001 to 2008, we doubled that. Um, Actually, went over doubled that in certain areas, from 7 to 11 kilometers cubed per year. So we've definitely increased the groundwater use in the United States. Land, so cropland covers 11% of the world's land area. So this is where they're planting for agriculture and foodstuffs. The increases in Southeast Asia and South America have offset decreases in Europe and North America. So we're actually losing cropland due to industry. These regions' increase in cropland have replaced primary forests. So we had talked about that. Down in South America, Brazil, and some of the rainforest countries down in South America are deforesting to create farmland or grazing land for livestock. It's a trade-off that we haven't seen the true negatives of yet, and hopefully we don't. They are trying to be very careful of not not cutting down too much of the rainforest. However, they do need land for their people to raise crops. And then the global production of primary crops, which is corn and wheat, has tripled since 1961. Corn, wheat, and rice. And so this shows as the fertilizer use. So as your cropland area, it's slightly risen, um, but your yield has gone up um, on this index here since 1961. However, your fertilizer use has gone up dramatically, and that's what we worry about, is with the use of fertilizer and runoff um, affecting our water sources. But again, we talked about fertilizers before. There are ways to mitigate the damages of fertilizer to water sources or to land sources by following the rules, using appropriate amounts of fertilizer, uh, and it'll help prevent some of the damages. So our future demands 2050. It's only 30 years away. The world population increased to 9.7 billion. That's 33% increase from 2015. Population will be primary driver for resource needs. So as the population increases, you're going to see an increase in the need for agriculture, and you're also going to see a need for industry. Material extraction will be 183 billion tons. Remember, that's biomass, that's minerals, non mineral metals, metals, anything that they can get their hands on. The demand for food will increase by 60%. The demand for fiber, so for clothes and other materials, 80 to 95%. And then the demand for water will increase by 55%. And here's a chart for all the scenarios that we just talked about here. You see, by 2050, all of them are going to increase. So, how do we reduce our resource depletion risks? Well, the UN has a Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, and there's 17 of them, and they're listed here. Um, and one of the ones we focus on here is the number 12, responsible consumption and production. So, as we said, 17 sustainable goals, many related to resources. Goal 12 is responsible consumption and production. Goal 14 is life below sea, and goal 15 is life on land. Life below sea, we want to protect the fishes, and we want to protect the ecosystem that is underneath the water that we can't see. And to do that, we don't dump hazardous waste into the water. When we build next to coastlines, we build with extra care. And then life on land is includes humans and animals. So resource management hierarchy, it's part of goal 12. One, we want to reduce the demand. So that's a cultural thing. We want to reduce the demand for everything we need. We want to improve material efficiency. So when we do use these materials and the demand is there, we increase our efficiency of industry and design. So how is it made? Can we make it with less? Can we make it with a different material? Synergies between companies, so waste from one company being used as a input for another. And the example is tires as a playground material. Tires get washed, and then they get chopped up and they're used for a soft landing for um, playgrounds. And then you want to obviously increase recycling, which over the last 2 decades has been pretty good. I would say most people are aware of recycling. Again, it's a cultural thing. It's hard to make people recycle, especially if they have to take the time to do it. Uh, People's lives are busy. Time is important to them. But like in the town of Bloomington, where I live, you pay for your trash waste to be picked up, and in doing so, you get a free recycling can, and it's picked up every 2 weeks. And in my household, we do recycle. We fill that bin up every 2 weeks, um, and it reduces what goes into a landfill. So, sustainable agroecology, recycle and reuse all available biomass, build soil organic material. We want to minimize soil losses, so we want to ensure that we're not strip farming and destroying the soil, and then when wind comes wrong, it erodes it, and you get another bowl like they had back in the 1920s and 30s. And then you want to enhance biological synergies, so we want to use crops that are helping other parts of the environment grow. Less resource intensive diets. One of those is meat. Meat consumption. Not only is it uh, um, uses 5 times more land than food that is planted, we want to try to get less resource intensive diet. And for most of us, that means a large reduction in the meat that we eat. Meat requires 5 times more land than food that is planted, that is land for grazing. They also require more plant resources for chickens and everything else that the hay, um, grasses, everything that were needed that goes into production of meat, and so beef and pork and fowl. Red meat consumption is double what is recommended. So again, in America, we can afford it, so we eat it. And the same thing with protein higher. Protein intake is 70% higher than the WHO recommends. Um, so we're eating more protein in our diets as a human than we should. And if you reduce the red meat, increase the plant based consumption, you'll have a reduction in resource use. Another way we can reduce resource waste is reducing food waste. So, eating leftovers and reheating food instead of just throwing out the unwanted food. And then in the supply chain waste. So, transporting, storing, and processing, and then food quality standards. Uh, this goes back to sustainable farming and local farming instead of bringing shipping in all this food. Can you buy it local? It reduces the amount of fossil fuels that are used in the transportation aspect. It reduces storage and processing at a major plant and helps reduce the use of resources and materials. So, per capita, again, that means per person, food losses and waste. Um, Consumer losses and consumer waste is that red, so that's that top one. And then production to retailing is the bottom one. So you notice that North America and Oceania is the greatest amount of consumer food loss and waste. And that's where we sit as America. So water use efficiency, cascading uses of water. Reduce drinking water use for lower quality needs. Gray water for landscape irrigation or flushing toilets, and harvesting rainwater for plants. So these are all ways you can use water better. Um, so when it says reducing drinking water for use for lower quality needs, that means using um, drinking water to only drink. So using drinking water is potable. Non-potable water has not been necessarily chemically treated, um, but it's safe for use, but not to ingest. So you could use non-potable water for showering, using it to water your lawn, as it talks about gray water. Gray water is non-potable, but it's been uh, treated to an effect, uh, but not for consumption. And then harvested rainwater, you can use it for plants. Some people have barrels for rainwater use, or you can divert. Um, like um, I have a sump pump that pumps out water, keeps water from overflowing my basement, and I have diverted that pipe from just an area in between our houses. I've diverted it to the front yard, so in the summer when it does um, run, it pumps water directly to my lawn in the front, and helps reduce the need for me to water my lawn. So, in summary, our use of natural resources is fundamental to many societal risks. We need to help. We need to pay attention to it. Pay attention to the resources we have left. Do everything we can to switch over to renewable resources. It's not a problem that we as a society see today. Not everybody sees it, but it's future generations that are going to be uh, impacted the most. Solutions will require individual, national, and international actions. I truly believe that we have to get on the same page internationally, um, but that means everybody doing their fair share, not just a single country uh, doing it for everyone else.